The newly published data exposes a trend that has taken even experienced observers by surprise. Thousands of migrants, many of whom entered the United Kingdom entirely legally through sought after skilled worker and student visas, are now turning to the political asylum process. This is not a gradual shift unfolding quietly in the background, it is a surge that has rapidly gained momentum. The government, faced with these developments, is now preparing a wide ranging and potentially strict set of measures aimed at curbing the practice. In this report, we take you straight into the heart of the issue. We will break down the numbers, examine the personal and often difficult realities driving these decisions, and outline the government's multi layered response that could have long lasting consequences for anyone involved in the UK's immigration system. According to the latest Home Office statistics, a growing number of people who arrive in the UK with legitimate visas, whether for work, study, or other legal purposes, are stepping away from these secure pathways to instead apply for asylum. For many, this decision means leaving behind stability for a process that can be lengthy, unpredictable, and in some cases, fraught with uncertainty. At first glance, the move seems puzzling. The skilled worker visa, for instance, is often described as a golden ticket, a direct, stable 5-year route to indefinite leave to remain, which paves the way to permanent settlement and ultimately full British citizenship. It is a path many individuals spend years and significant amounts of money trying to secure. Given its advantages, the question naturally rises: why would anyone willingly abandon such a secure position for the complexities and risks of the asylum system? The figures underscore just how widespread this has become. In 2022, just over 4,000 people switched from a legal visa to an asylum claim. By 2024, that number had skyrocketed to 1,840 to more than twice the figure from a decade ago, and an extraordinary leap from just 151 cases recorded back in 2006. These numbers are not statistical outliers. They represent a sustained and dramatic change in behavior over time. When we examine the data more closely, certain patterns begin to emerge, patterns that suggest this is not simply the result of isolated personal circumstances, but part of a larger, systemic shift. The reasons are varied and often complex, ranging from changes in personal safety to political and economic pressures in migrants' home countries. For some, unforeseen challenges in the UK, such as changes in employment conditions, financial hardship, or evolving visa regulations, may be pushing them toward the asylum process as a last resort. In response, the government is preparing a multi-pronged strategy designed to address this surge head-on. While the full details of the plan have yet to be released, officials have hinted at measures that will tighten the rules for those attempting to switch visa categories, increase monitoring within the immigration system, and reduce opportunities for what they see as the misuse of asylum protections. If implemented, these changes could significantly alter the path for anyone currently living or working in the UK under a legal visa. This is a developing story with potentially far-reaching implications, not only for policymakers and immigration officials, but for thousands of individuals who now find themselves at a crossroads deciding between holding onto a secure legal route or stepping into the uncertain world of asylum claims. Roughly 1 in 5 of those abandoning their original visas for asylum status are Pakistani nationals, nearly 4,000 individuals, most of whom first arrive as students. They are followed in significant numbers by nationals from Afghanistan, Iran, Libya, and Bangladesh. This is not simply a steady upward trend, it is a curve that is steepening, a surge accelerating at a pace that has triggered urgent discussions inside the Home Office. Which brings us to the pressing question: why is this happening? On the surface, one might assume asylum offers a faster route to permanent settlement, bypassing the 5-year pathway tied to many work visas. Others might point to the long, complex appeals process that, in some cases, allows individuals to remain in the UK for extended periods, even if their claim is eventually rejected. But these explanations don't capture the full picture, particularly when it comes to those already on stable, respected visa tracks, such as skilled worker routes. For them, Abandoning that security for the uncertainty of asylum suggests much deeper forces at work. The reality is rooted in desperation, exploitation, and systemic breakdown. And it is crucial to remember these are not people who cross borders illegally. These are individuals who were officially invited to come to the UK. One of the most significant driving forces behind this crisis lies within the UK's care sector, where disturbing cases of exploitation have been repeatedly exposed behind the headlines. The lived reality is even harsher. Thousands of care workers recruited from overseas to fill critical staff shortages were enticed with promises of secure, well-paid positions, but once here, many found themselves trapped in conditions that could only be described as modern-day indentured servitude, unscrupulous recruitment agents, and, in some cases, even sponsoring employers charged illegal and extortionate fees often between £5,000 and £15. Zero before workers could even set foot in the UK, saddled with this crushing debt. Many arrived to discover the promised role either didn't exist or came with wages so low, and hours so punishing, that basic survival became a daily challenge. Accommodation often added to their misery. Some were placed in overcrowded, poorly maintained housing owned or arranged by the very employers controlling their visas and therefore their ability to remain in the country. In such situations, the pressure from family expectations back home, combined with the financial strain and emotional toll, left many with no viable way forward. For some, the only option was to take on undeclared work, a direct violation of visa rules when caught, or even to preempt being caught. Many saw the asylum system as their sole escape route from both exploitation and deportation. For many migrants well beyond those in the care sector, the journey to the UK begins with the hope of a secure job and a stable future. Yet for some, that hope unravels almost instantly. There are countless cases where the sponsoring company has abruptly closed its doors, lost its license, or withdrawn the job offer altogether. This problem escalated when the Home Office began its much-needed clampdown on abusive employers. While this move targeted exploitation, it also meant that when such companies lost their sponsorship rights, their employees, many of whom were entirely innocent, were suddenly left without legal footing. These workers then received the dreaded 60-day notice, a formal letter granting just 2 months to secure a new sponsoring employer, or face removal from the UK in a job market as competitive as Britain's. Convincing another employer to navigate the costly and complex sponsorship process within such a tight deadline is a near impossible task. With time running out and their legal status slipping away, many migrants feel cornered, seeing asylum as the only possible lifeline to avoid deportation and homelessness. The challenges facing students are equally severe. Universities eagerly welcome international students and the high tuition fees they bring, but once studies conclude, the path forward is narrow and highly competitive. Transitioning from a student visa to a skilled worker visa requires meeting strict eligibility rules, and the fight for sponsored roles is intense. Graduates often carry heavy financial debts, yet find that employers are reluctant to shoulder the cost and bureaucracy of sponsorship. As visa expiry dates loom, returning home without achieving their ambitions becomes a devastating prospect. For some, the asylum system becomes the last remaining door still open. The government's countermeasures, the Home Office has made it clear it will not let this trend continue unchecked. Officials are preparing a sweeping set of policy changes, aimed squarely at those who switch from work or study visas to asylum claims. The first move is expected to be a sharp tightening of eligibility. A claim will only be considered if the applicant can prove that conditions in their home country have deteriorated significantly since they first arrived, a demanding legal standard that will likely exclude the vast majority of such applications. From the outset, the second measure targets accommodation. Migrants on work or study visas are required to submit detailed financial records when applying, proving they have the means to support themselves. The government now intends to use those very same records as evidence to deny them taxpayer-funded housing, should they later claim to be destitute. The underlying logic is blunt. If you once had sufficient funds, you cannot now be considered truly without means. This change will make it substantially harder for former visa holders to secure a roof over their heads while their asylum claim is processed. A broader crackdown, these proposals are part of a wider tightening of the immigration system, which has already seen higher salary thresholds for sponsored work, restrictions on dependent visas for many applicants, and a freeze on overseas recruitment for care workers. The Home Office has also announced plans to speed up asylum processing, recruiting more caseworkers and court officers to clear the backlog. Officially, the goal is efficiency. Unofficially, the aim appears to be faster rejection of what the government deems weak or tactical claims, particularly those made as a way to extend a stay after a visa expires. The approach signals an immigration system increasingly engineered to filter out and refuse such applications at speed. A hidden emergency, perhaps the most striking revelation in the data, is just how many of these cases involve skilled workers, people who followed every rule, paid the required fees, and contributed to the UK economy. The statistics point to a deeper emergency inside the legal immigration framework itself, a system where exploitation, sudden job loss, and impossible time limits can push even the most compliant migrants into desperate decisions. Yet, instead of addressing these root causes, cracking down harder on exploitation, reforming sponsorship timelines, and improving pathways to stability, the government's strategy appears focused on closing the only escape routes available. The message is unmistakable. The next phase of Britain's immigration crackdown will not only target those who arrive illegally, but also those who entered with a legal visa, a legitimate offer, and the hope of building a life here. What are your thoughts on this growing crisis? Should legal migrants ever be placed in a position where asylum feels like their only option? Share your perspective in the comments. Thank you for watching this report. Please remember, this video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal or immigration advice. I'll see you in the next broadcast.